All right, we're ready.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's staying warm and safe from the snow. And I would like to call the January 18th, 2023 Longmont Sustainability Advisory Board meeting to order. Can we please start the roll call?
Yes, Kate Collardson.
Unmuted here.
She's here. Jim Metcalf.
I'm here.
Let's see, Charles Musgrave.
I'm here.
Robert Davidson.
Present.
Ralph Grosswald.
Present.
And Mary and Michelle were unable to join us last minute today. So the staff members, we have Lisa Knobloch.
Here.
Becky Doyle is here with us and will be on later. Francie Jaffe.
Here.
Debbie Seidman.
Here, thank you.
Zach Lance.
Hi, I'm here.
Daryl Hahn is with us.
Yep.
And Heather McIntyre is here, and Councilmember Martin.
Here.
All right. We have one guest with us so far is David Brenna from the Senior Citizen Advisory Board. And we'll have some more that are supposed to be joining us later in the meeting for public invited to be heard. But we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Heather. And before we move on in the agenda, I just want to read our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that Longmont sits on the traditional territory of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute, and other indigenous peoples. We honor the history and the living and spiritual connection that the first peoples have with this land. It's our commitment to face the injustices that happened when the land was taken and to educate our communities, ourselves, and our children to ensure that these injustices do not happen again. All right, so I'm going to jump into the annual review of duties and responsibilities. So you all received in your packet a number of materials relating to this item. So the board rules and regulations, as well as some supporting information. So first of all, let's see, I just want to make sure that everyone had a chance to read those materials. Excellent. Okay, seeing lots of nods and heads. And just to reiterate, the mandate that we have from the code is the purpose and duties of the Sustainability Advisory Board is that this board is advisory only. The duties shall be as follows: identify topics related to environmental quality and sustainability, such as air and water quality, pollution prevention, solid waste disposal and recycling, energy efficiency, renewable energy, and green building, and to advise the City Council on plans, policies, and actions related to those topics. The City Council may request the board to consider environmental topics not specifically listed in this section and advise the council on such topics. And then in general, to advise the City Council on the environmental and sustainability aspects of city plans, policies, and directives and related goals and strategies, and define goals for the board and work plans aligned with the board's responsibilities, and advise council on environmental and sustainability topics. So just wanted to reiterate that for everyone. And then do you all have any revisions that you all would like to make to the rules and regulations document? Yeah, Ralph.
I have a question, and again, I always defer to the folks that have been doing this much longer than me. And I just wondered about the quorum requirements. We have 7 people on our board. A quorum is only 3 people, and action can be taken by a majority of those present, which would mean that 2 people could, create policy for the board. And again, I'm not suggesting we change this. I wanted to bring it to the board's attention just to see if this has been addressed before, if everybody feels okay with it. Again, I haven't sat through enough meetings to know if this is an issue, but it seems like to me, it puts a lot of responsibility and power in a small group, and just wanted to get the board's, thoughts on this without taking too much of everybody's time.
Thanks, Ralph. Councilmember Martin.
Ralph, I would just like to clarify, because it isn't as much power as it sounds like. This is an advisory board.
Right.
So the recommendations of the board do not become policy unless you send something up to the council, like a resolution or a report, and the council votes to accept it or to pass the resolution, or, you know, or whatever it may be. So two people can proceed with business, if that's right. Is it right? I thought the quorum was 4, but anyway, I don't know that. What I do know is that the advisory board isn't creating policy by itself, so it's less urgent.
I do understand that, but thank you for that clarification. The main thing is the board could be thinking that we have presented a recommendation, thinking that 7 people have thought this through and discussed it. And if anybody has seen it different, I don't have it up in front of me, and I read it a few days ago. My understanding is it's only 3 people makes a quorum, and if it's a majority of those present, which means 2 people, so that the council could think that this has been, you know, considered by a variety of, you know, of opinions, and it may not be. Again, I don't mean to, you know, waste time if everybody feels like this is not an issue. I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention. To me, it seems like it would be better to at least add 1 more person, but you guys, you know, I would defer to what other people think on this.
I do want to add, I think that's a good point, Ralph. I do want to just add that normally when I do pass things along to City Council with information from this, that the Sustainability Advisory Board had weighed in on, I usually do provide them with information on whether a vote was unanimous and if there were members missing or if there was an abstention, or so I do try to provide that contextual information when things go up to City Council. But you all can vote to change that if you like. I saw Heather nodding her head that Ralph is correct in what he's saying.
Yeah, the board does have in their bylaws currently that quorum is 3. So you can conduct business if you have 3 people. I think historically it was created that way in a time where it was harder to get the full majority of the board present at the meeting. So if that is something that the board wants to revisit and change so that it would be a majority, then I think that is your prerogative to do so.
I mean, I would be content if the quorum was at least 4, then knowing that it would take at least 3 people to approve something. But if there's nobody else that sees this as an issue, we can certainly move on. If anybody else feels that it might be good to move that from a quorum of 3 to 4, then I would make a motion to that effect.
I guess I'd just be curious how many times in the last few years we wouldn't have had a quorum. I guess that's the only thing that I worry about, is because we only meet once a month. If we had a month that we didn't have a quorum, you know, because, you know, we only had 3 people show up, would that mean that we'd have to double up on the next meeting and hoping that we had a quorum that meeting? And I worry a little bit about the snowballing effect of that. I don't think moving the quorum number to 4 would be much of an issue. I seem to remember that, if I had to guess, we usually have at least 4 people. But that would be my only concern, is that we would start kind of snowballing unresolved issues if we did too much.
If I remember correctly from last year, there were a couple of times where we only had 3 board members. And at that point in time, the members decided to just table any decision making until there was more of the board members present. So they were not trying to make decisions without more people present. So it might be beneficial to go ahead and increase the quorum, but it's up to you guys.
Yeah, I'd be fine with it, Ralph. I think that's a good suggestion. You know, 4 is more than half of the total, but obviously. What?
Charles?
Yeah, I had very similar thoughts to Jim, with the one addition that if at some point we were to go back to in-person, that might exacerbate the issue with having a quorum. I think maybe, Heather, was that what you were referring to, is that before we were on Zoom, the attendance was generally a little lower?
I think that was more like even prehistoric to that, like kind of when the board was created originally. They had some issues with that.
Okay.
But last year, I remember, I think 2 occasions where we only had 3 board members present.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine that if we did at some point go to in person, that might make it more difficult for people to be able to get to meetings, and we might here and there have lose a board member or 2 at a meeting. But generally, yeah, 4 seems like a more normal number to have as a quorum when you have a board size of 7.
Well, I'm not sure what the best thing to do is. Maybe I'll just make a motion that'll be changed, and I won't be insulted if it's not supported. My preference would be to move it. It's very helpful to know that in general, the experience has been that people don't make a recommendation to the city council. There's, if it's only 3, but so I'll make a motion and see where it goes.
I'll second that motion. I like it.
All in favor? Okay. And that motion passes unanimously with board members present. Thank you all. Any other revisions or comments that you all have on the rules and regulations before we move on to election of officers?
No, but I do want to thank Ralph again for bringing that up.
Yes, great. Thank you. And speaking of that, I had this poll. Ooh, it's going to take me a minute. I did just want to call attention. I had it up and then I moved to something else. With regards to that, the rules around attendance, just as a reminder for folks, just to make sure that we, if at all possible, can maintain a quorum. Sorry, I have this in front of me and now it disappeared. Heather, if you happen to have that available, can you pull it up so I can move on to the next piece and then we can come back? And
yeah, I have it.
That. Oh, perfect.
Here, hold on one second.
Thanks.
Let's see, what page? I think it's
right there. B2.
this one,
Yeah,
section B, number 2.
Yep, so any board member with 2 consecutive unexcused absences from regular scheduled meetings, or any member with 4 or more absences within a 12-month period. And again, we always take December off, so we really only have 11 meetings per year, can be recommended for dismissal. So just to keep that in mind, life happens, we all know that. So, please make sure to communicate any absences to us and, bear that in mind that if life becomes such for you all that it doesn't work for you all to participate in the way that is expected, that is a possibility as well.
Just one note of clarification on that too. We did put in there, I think it was 2 years ago, that an absence is considered excused when notification of at least 24 hours has been received by staff. So barring any emergency kind of things, especially since we increased the quorum, it would be increasingly important to let us know ahead of time so we can cancel the meeting if we need to.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. All right, so moving on to election of officers. As you all know, Kate Collardson has been serving as our chair and Jim, be formal, as our vice chair. I'd like to ask for nominations for a chair as well as a vice chair, and also with the knowledge that they can continue in their roles, I believe, right, Heather? We haven't hit any limits in terms of you all wielding your power. Just kidding. So as nominations for chair, do I have anyone that wants to throw a name forward?
Can I ask if the current officers are interested in continuing?
Oh, that's a great question, Ralph.
I'm happy to continue, and if others are interested in the chair position, I'm happy to relinquish it. But if I'm, like I said, quite happy to continue in this position.
I feel the same way. It's kind of nice, like introduction to how things are run, but I could see that there are a lot of other board members who might like that experience, and I'd have no problem at all. If other people would like to nominate themselves even to try out the position, that'd be great.
Yes, I think I was going to say, please don't be afraid to nominate yourself if you would like to do that.
Could you just review the salaries again for?
Sure, Ralph. There's a 0 and a 0 for you.
Lots of zeros for you, Ralph.
Do I get to keep the town car if?
We gotta have some fun while we're doing this still.
Yeah, Councilmember Martin, did you have a comment, question?
A question that, since we are like doing really official stuff, I was looking at the names here. Who is Lennox Wireless? I apologize if everybody knows but me.
Yeah, I think that's a member of the public. Give me just one moment to give them access here.
Need a face or a name.
Hi guys, this is Courtney Gilardi. I signed up for public comments and I actually emailed Heather and said, I can't change my name.
I'll get it for you.
If you can do it for me, it's Courtney and the last name is Gilardi, Gilardi. And I did send an email with my apology. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for asking, Marcia.
All right, so anyone want to nominate themselves or anyone else for chair or vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Kate and Jim to continue in their roles.
Okay.
Thank you, Charles.
Hey.
I'll second that.
There we go. Anyone want to throw anything else in the ring? Okay. All in favor of Kate and Jim maintaining their current roles?
Hi.
I'm voting for Kate, not myself. No, just kidding.
All right, and that also passes unanimously with all members present, or with the members present, I would say, which is great because now I'm going to turn this over to Kate.
Okay. All right.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Thanks for facilitating, Lisa. So the next item on the agenda is the designation of a posting place. And the, let me flip over to my packet. It is, Heather, do you mind?
Sure. The city's website, the city's website has a portal for all of the boards to put their agendas and stuff on. So that is the official place. In the past, we have also done a secondary one of a paper copy posted at the Civic Center and one at the Service Center at 1100 South Sherman. So
great. And this is an opportunity for us to change that, or no?
If you want to change the secondary one, the primary one is pretty much the way all of the boards have been instructed to go, though.
Sure. Any thoughts? Anyone want to request changes on the secondary posting place? Says perfect. Okay. Future of our meetings, the virtual or in person. This has been a topic that we have batted around for a while, and I think I'll offer my thoughts and then open the floor to discussion on it. I personally have found that these online meetings are, from a convenience standpoint, accessible, and also I appreciate from a sustainability standpoint, the lack of a commute to the service center. understand that there might be differing views here, and want to open the floor for comments, thoughts on that question. Yeah, Robert.
So yeah, I have a decent bit of business travel that I do from time to time, and the virtual, like I'm on the road today, having it virtual makes it a lot more accessible for me to participate reliably. And if we're going to increase the quorum, I really think we need to make it easy for people to enjoy life outside of Longmont.
Thanks for those thoughts. Chip?
Yeah, I agree with the convenience. I think that we've also, I think I did 2 or 3 years before of in-person meetings, maybe. I feel that we get a lot more public invited to be heard, voicing their opinion, which I also kind of like, but I'm also still not totally in a place where I want to sit in small rooms with lots of people. And so I would still very much favor that we stay virtual if possible. That's my feeling.
Thank you. Yeah, Charles.
Yeah, I have similar, again, thoughts as Robert and Jim. I work in Boulder, so there are times when I have meetings. Actually, I had a meeting today that went till 4 o'clock. It turned into a virtual meeting because of the weather, but otherwise I would have been there. It probably wouldn't have been able to, get back to. I would have had to drive to work. Well, if the weather is fine. Yesterday I rode my bike to work, but I would have had to drive so that I could drive to this meeting. So from multiple perspectives, convenience, sustainability, and even just being able to get here at a reasonable hour, I think it could affect my attendance and things. I think my term ends this year, so I'm probably shouldn't be a determining factor in how we conduct our meetings or hold our meetings.
Thanks for your thoughts. Ralph, do you have any thoughts on this topic?
I think the only thing is certainly it's convenient and it helps attendance. Not having met you folks in person, it'd be wonderful if at some point this year, we had the opportunity to meet face to face. I agree with Jim. I've protected myself even when my partner Terry, she got COVID and I managed to dodge the bullet. So I'm still a little nervous about that, but it'd be wonderful. And it does concern me, you'll know, because when we get to the public to be heard, that's important to me. And it's good to know that it maybe makes it more accessible when that happens. I had a question, not having ever been to a live meeting. In the facility where we would meet, is there the opportunity, is there a screen or anything where, we can meet live, but if somebody like Charles couldn't, was held up, he could do it virtually, or it's strictly one or the other?
We, some of the other advisory boards in the city have gone to a hybrid option. I know I serve as the recording secretary for the water board as well. And what they've done is they've gone back to in-person, but in cases of emergency where you're traveling or you have somebody who's sick in your family or something, the board members do have an option to attend remotely. It's only available for board members to attend remotely. Anyone who would come from the community would need to be in person.
Well, I think that's a great option. And again, I'm not in a hurry to get in a room with people right now, but if we do move towards that at some point later in the year, I think having the option for folks who might otherwise not be able to attend on our board to do it virtually would be a great option. So those are my only thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, I might just recommend that whatever decision you all make, you do it for the entire year rather than a partial year, so we don't have to spend time on this topic frequently.
I was just, we're on the same page there, Heather, and was going to recommend exactly that, that whatever decision we make, let's make it either permanent or for a year, and keep ourselves from continuing this conversation too often. So Would somebody make a motion around that? Yes, Charles.
Could I ask a quick question before we do that? Maybe, I'm not sure if Heather or another city staff member has observed I forget which board it is that meets, was it the water board that meets in a hybrid mode? How does that go? How well does that work? I mean, a lot of it depends upon the equipment and internet connections and things like that in the location. And secondly, the person running those meetings, how good are they at, and because sometimes there's an issue with people who are remote, can't participate as well. That's definitely an issue in many cases, but at the same time, hybrid oftentimes means either participating in a less ideal fashion or not participating at all. I'm curious about how it went in the water board, because that would kind of sway me one way, could sway me one way or the other.
Sure. We've had a couple of instances in the last year where a board member has had to be remote, and it functions, the people who are present are in the conference room. We do have all of the equipment necessary to make a remote meeting possible. The city has gone to that in all of the conference rooms. So they work fairly well. And I haven't really noticed any, what's the word I'm looking for? I haven't noticed any disunity or dysfunction in disengagement or anything in that. They do try to include the member pretty regularly in the decisions that they're making. And if you are the one that is remote, you're very large on a screen. So it's hard to not include you in the meeting. So
thank you.
Councilmember Martin could also speak to that because she is the liaison for that board as well.
Heather, you couldn't have said it any better. I would like Zoom to make noise when someone raises their hand. That would be a great feature. But other than that, it works perfectly, I think.
We actually can do that. So that's a good idea.
Oh, can you? Oh, yeah. You can change the settings because you have power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Robert.
So I wanted to ask the staff, we push these meetings back later to allow for greater community participation, later in person, maybe in other things. I wish we could give the staff an opportunity to weigh in on the impact for them. I know we've discussed this previously. Everyone seems open to doing whatever we need to do to make sure we can accomplish business, but I'd still like it.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. I think, honestly, it depends more on the topics that are being discussed during that particular meeting. So I haven't noticed necessarily one way or the other. However, I think with COVID, it's just, lots of things have changed. It's hard to say if we were to go back in person, if that would make a difference for that. But in the past, we haven't typically had a lot of people in general. I've been here for almost 7 years, show up to public invited to be heard, unless there's a really specific topic that is popular in the community at that time. Then sometimes we'll have folks show up from public invited to be heard. I would say that we've had more public invited to be heard show up in the last, 2+ years that we've been on Zoom. Took me a minute to remember what platform we're using. But I will say most of them have been around the same topic as well. So it's been a lot of similar folks on the similar topic, which we've seen in the past for periods of time as well. So we have seen more, whether or not that's a function of being virtual or not. It's hard for me to say. So sorry, that may not be that helpful.
Other questions, comments? Charles.
I'd like to make a motion that we hold our sustainability advisory board meetings in a hybrid fashion. And I don't necessarily support this, but I want to get the voting and get the decisions done. So
hybrid. So
hybrid, yeah.
And can you clarify, Charles, is that sort of similar to what Heather said of the expectation
Yes.
would be that you're in person with a hybrid option should the need arise?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I couldn't quite gauge the full like support level. Maybe the vote mainly either to just take it off the table and stop discussing it, or move on with what we really want to do. Because I think if we discuss the hybrid, we could discuss it for a long time, and it turns out we didn't really have any support for it in the first place at this time.
I would be the one to do that support, and it has worked out okay for us to do in the water board. So it would not be a problem to do that. We would just need to have somebody give me a clue as soon as possible if you need to be remote, so that we can get the link sent out to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Heather. I understood that. That makes sense. I was mainly talking about the support among the board members, whether they want to do that or not, because if it turns out no one really wants to do it, we probably shouldn't keep discussing it.
Does anybody want to second that motion? Because I think that might. All right.
Exactly.
All right. Cool. Thanks for taking that off the table.
Well, I'll move that we stay virtual for 2023.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Okay, and that passes with unanimous consent of the folks present. Thanks, y'all. Okay, moving on to approval of the minutes from the last meeting. I was not present and cannot speak to the minutes. Any thoughts there? Any revisions that need to happen?
I'll move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Yeah.
All right. I'm abstaining because I wasn't there. Heather.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any agenda revisions? Any documents to be submitted? No, thank you. Moving on to general business. Reminder to the board to please hold your comments and questions until after staff has finished presenting. The floor is yours, Lisa.
Great, thanks so much, Kate. All right, so as we do typically in the first part of the year, especially now as we have a lot of ongoing projects and priorities happening, I put together a 2023 work plan essentially for the board to run through with you all to make sure I'm not missing anything that's a big priority for you all, and also Councilmember Martin, if there's anything from the council standpoint that you know might be coming down that would be important to put on the radar for this board, I can add it to this as well. As you can see, I have, so this is month by month with some general categories, and then you can see I put December in red because we never meet. And also I just realized I didn't update the dates for 2023, so please ignore where it says the dates of the months. I will adjust that later. And then I did also drop in, if we do end up having vacancies and go through the interview process, because we changed that process last year to have board members more involved, that's also reflected in this schedule. Again, I think the last round we didn't have any vacancies or folks to interview, so some of that might not be applicable depending on what it looks like for each year. So in January, we go through our work plan, general business stuff, all the things that we just did today. I'll go through some updates with you later on the Plastic Pollution Reduction Act. February, we're looking at our year-end progress report and then some general sustainability updates. We have some, even though I have a general topic of energy, which captures the ongoing report from Platte River Power Authority, which we started last year. I dropped in an update for commercial benchmarking. I will put the caveat to Debbie, who's on this call, that she and I haven't had a chance to talk about that yet. So that might move months. Some of these things can move. I just wanted to have a placeholder in here. I did maintain the electrification plan separately from the general topic of energy because there's such a focus on that. And I wanted to maintain that as such. And the key piece that will be coming earlier in this year is the recommendations from the Boulder County Code cohort process that's been underway, focused on zero waste. So we have continuation of our work with the Universal Recycling Ordinance that I want to make sure to keep you all apprised of, the climate risk and vulnerability map, and then just some general components around natural environment and water conservation, because I know those are big topic areas for this board to focus on as well. And the two things that I dropped in for this year is a potential conversation with environmental services folks on the evolving issue of PFAS, as I imagine came up a little bit last year, but there's a lot of things that are changing. And I'm sure folks have been hearing some additional things that have been in the news lately around that. Yeah, Marcia, go ahead.
Lisa, one thing you may want to add to the calendar is the City Council retreat, which is March 10th and 11th. It might be important either to listen or to speak because it's looking like big sustainability stuff is going to be a big agenda item.
Yeah.
And in particular, I think we all feel the urgency of pushing on the building envelope issues so that we will be prepared for the transition to heat pumps when people need to replace their space heating devices. So it's just something, obviously no requirements to attend, but it'd be good to keep that top of mind.
Yeah, thanks so much, Marcia. I appreciate you putting that on the radar. Are there any other council priorities that you don't see captured here that you think are important to at least keep this board apprised of, if not necessarily bring something specific to? Marcia,
I'm not that fast. I promise if I think of something, I will let you know, but so far I haven't. Unless you're interested in putting sustainable aviation on the radar, because I believe that the Airport Advisory Board is going to send that, is going to send that sustainability resolution on to council at their next meeting. So, it's a thing. It's sustainability.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll at least put that on the radar. And this is a living document too. Obviously, this is not going to be set in stone. It just helps me to identify what are the key priorities that I want to make sure we carve out space for. And then as other things come up throughout the year, I will drop those in. And like I said, some of these things will move around as well. And then if you all are probably not steeped in the acronyms as we are, under water conservation, that's the Water Efficiency Master Plan update. So that process will be, there'll be a lot happening with that this year as well. And then, okay, so with Marcia's comments, are there anything else from other board members that Jim?
Thanks. Yeah, so one of the things that's come up a couple times and one of the categories I'd like to see on here would be the transportation portion of our sustainability plan. And I know that we've, there's the bus rapid transit and all the things that are happening there. But also, I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about accessibility and transportation the last few weeks. And I'd like to kind of have that on our radar in terms of, walkable, bikeable communities. And we've had presentations on the Main Street plan. And I know that there are plans for other main corridors as well to try to reduce the danger from traffic and things like that. But I would love to have that as a category And I don't have specifics off the top of my head. I'm pretty slow as well, but
no, that's perfect. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Other items?
Lisa, there were a couple of items that Mary sent to us via email.
Yep, I was going to share those.
Okay.
I just wanted to give other folks any other opportunity. Marcia, did you have anything else? Or
I did. Based on James's suggestion, there is an intra-city transit collective impact initiative with the Longmont Economic Development Partners. And one thing to consider is, delegating a representative to this board who might want to attend those. There's no real rules about who can be in those other than more than 2 council members can't. But if you're adding transit, sustainable transit as a specific topic interest, then that would be something to consider. So I just thought I'd get that out there.
yeah, thanks, Marcia. Can you shoot me some information on that? Because I feel like I've heard a couple rumblings here and there, but I don't have very much information myself about that. That'd be great. Thank you. All right. So the things that Mary brought up, she just wanted to call attention to a few things that sounds like they came up during the open forum last night. And Marcia, feel free to jump in and add, or anything was regarding sustainable local food systems, sustainable land policy, and child and teen health and well-being. And with that one, she noted, how can we support via that topic, via what this board focuses on. So I think definitely food systems and land policy are things that go together, and I'm happy to add in something on that piece if people are interested in that particular topic area. It's not something we've talked about for a little while, so it might be a good time to bring that back in the conversation. I see some general head nodding.
I like that idea.
Okay. And then any thoughts on the child and teen health and well-being topic? Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, it is part of Longmont's plan. I just, I'd be curious what it would be that we could help. But I mean, I like the idea of it being something that our board talks about. I just would, like with all these things, I want to make sure that we actually have like an end goal as to what we're actually going to be able to recommend or something like that. But it certainly is part of sustainability and therefore our domain.
Yeah, I have a similar thought. I'm curious, and I could put some more thought to this in general around how we can sort of keep some better tabs on some of the priority areas of other boards, and how there could be some cross-board support on things, because I think that could be really valuable and impactful. And just off the top of my head, thinking about that, and I don't know what all was talked about with regards to that issue, but thinking about the tie to food systems in particular, I think about things like health and food access, and that could be a tie there. Same with some of the transportation access and connectivity stuff. So depending on what sort of was discussed in that topic area in particular, I can see some overlap. But Marcia, yeah.
Just before putting things on the schedule, it might be good to check in with the liaison to human services.
Yeah.
And maybe a joint session might be a good idea, but actually for both of those things, food accessibility also, both of those are also human services things. If you broaden the definition of sustainability enough, it includes the whole world, which of course it does. So hard to say, but
yeah,
just a suggestion.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you all. Yeah, Charles.
we were kind of planning out for the full year, so maybe this isn't practical, but one option would be to have, for example, some of the other offices or other boards, if we were provided material that could be added to the packet for us to read, and then we could look it over and then kind of decide if we want to discuss it, or if we learned enough from just reading it. Oftentimes I find that you can eliminate meetings by having something to read.
Yes, good point, Charles. Thanks. Yeah, I'll definitely look into that more. We definitely have a lot of boards and commissions, but I'll put some more thought into that and kind of try to see if I can put some structure around, some of that cross-board support, or at least information sharing, because I think that that'd be really helpful. And also try to not overwhelm you all with packet materials, but at least to give some high-level information. So I like that.
Yeah, that'd be great, and it'd probably be more interesting than reading the rules of our board and things like that. So I'd welcome that. It was pretty exciting. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Ralph.
I just wondered, number one, whether or not, and I think you're kind of addressing this, whether there are other boards of that topic, that it's more focused on those boards. Certainly, as Marcia mentioned, you could expand sustainability to be everything under the sun. But I also wondered whether or not by expanding this further, does it water down our focus and our effectiveness in actually contributing something to the council? And I'm only asking, I'm not saying that it will, but I would want to take that under consideration. If there are others that this falls more squarely on other boards, we certainly I would be interested in seeing any information about what they're doing. But do we do the best job by focusing on things that are a little more in our wheelhouse if it's being addressed by other boards?
Yeah, I think I think that's a really good point. And I think that might also be a benefit of having some more information on what other boards are covering, so that we can maintain the focus of this board and not kind of go into some of those areas where some of the other boards also cover topics. But I do think that, there is a transportation advisory board, but they are also very interested in sustainability and sustainable transportation. And there could be some really beneficial kind of overlap to some of those things as well. But yeah, I think we would need to, we only have 11 2-hour meetings, and there's a lot we need to get done that we really do need your feedback and support and advice on to bring to council. So I think that'll be part of the job of staff too, to just make sure that we're staying on track with those things and not overloading your agendas, so that you all can provide that meaningful feedback to city council. Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We have to worry about kind of like spreading ourselves too thin. I totally agree with that. But I also think that one of the things that I really appreciate about Longmont's sustainability plan, and one of the things that makes me like very proud that the city has this plan, is just how integrated it is. And I just want to make sure that these other topics are kind of like rolling through our schedule, and that we are stressing that they are also an important part of making the community sustainable and resilient. And so I agree, we can't do everything this year, but I think that like the reason that I think our sustainability plan is so good is because it includes so many things, and it kind of really highlights that. So I think I totally agree that we can't hit all the points, and we don't want to overlap with what other boards do, but making sure that we're kind of adding our support behind aspects of those other things that are important components of sustainability. I kind of want to make sure that we are living up to the sustainability plan, I guess.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate that as well. Maybe if I can think about it some more, I think of some good graphics or something. That's not my strong suit, but all right. Anything else that folks want to add in? And again, like I said, this is the living document we can revisit, or you can always kind of bring things to the board as other topics or priorities come up as well.
Lisa, I just wanted to thank you for preparing that, and it really gives me some focus about what are some of the things we'll be, considering this year. So thank you very much for your work on that.
Yeah, thank you all. All right, so if there's nothing else on that, that's the only, am I missing anything? Oh, no, I'm jumping, am I jumping ahead? Yes, sorry, Kate, turning it back to you.
Thanks. Thanks for that, Lisa. Appreciate all the work that you do. It is now time for the public invited to be heard. Each person wishing to speak will be unmuted to speak. When it is your turn to speak, please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes for comment. And I will signal when your 3 minutes is up, and please do be respectful of that time limit. Heather, how many people do we have today?
I believe we have 5.
Okay.
So first up is Courtney.
Okay. So Courtney, when you're ready, please come off mute and state your name and address and share your comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let me know if anytime you can't, and I also have my daughter, Amelia, here as well, who will be reading after me, and Heather's got her signed up. So good evening, my name is Courtney Gilardi. I'm calling from Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and I'm calling in support of a no-fee smart meter opt-out. Sadly, I became involved in this issue because myself and my children were harmed due to wireless radiation. Our Board of Health investigated and issued an emergency cease and desist for the cell tower, making our homes uninhabitable and creating health effects in 20 of my neighbors. I'm aware that those from the smart meter industry will tell you that there is no harm from non-ionizing radiation. However, physicians, environmental toxicologists, pediatric neurologists, and the American Academy of Pediatrics in their position statement on wireless harm will tell you otherwise. I will provide Ms. McIntyre the Massachusetts Medical Society House of Delegates position statement on wireless, our Board of Health's position statement in support of wireless safety bills. And I can also provide you with the 2020 City of Boston submission to the FCC's 19-26 docket, stating that Boston believes that the concerns of the public are real and that the Commission has done a disservice to itself, local government, consumers, and even the wireless industry in failing to understand and respond to the broadly shared issues of the safety of RF emissions. And with so many issues related to liability when folks are harmed, Longmont would be well served to do their due diligence and research into who is responsible when smart meters are placed on homes and people develop symptoms. A cell tower constructed outside our house, and the reason why we knew it was on, even though the tower had already been constructed and was up for weeks, was because my just turned 10-year-old child came downstairs one morning complaining of dizziness, a buzzy head, feeling headachy. When I went outside, the tower indeed was turned on, confirmed by Verizon. It had just been fired up this morning. And that's a story of so many people when a smart meter is applied to their house. Now, I had no idea that the radiation from the tower could be felt immediately, not just by myself and my children, but multiple neighbors who also had things like AFib, palpitations, insomnia, headaches, skin rashes, tinnitus, and other biological health issues as diagnosed by their physicians. As a result of the exposure to wireless radiation, I'm now sensitive to it, and my children and myself have ongoing health issues that we still grapple with. I didn't know that many people were harmed by smart meters until we started getting into this issue. And if you have a large house, you may be able to move your bed or sleeping area away from the meter. But if you have a small home or live in an apartment, you may not have that choice. And no one should have to choose between their home and their health the way that we have. As I sought to understand what was happening, people reached out to me, and I was blown away by the sheer number of people sensitive to this. Dr. Magda Havas estimates around 2% of the population, and like other illnesses, wireless sensitivity falls into the category of mild, moderate, and severe, and the only remedy is avoidance and reducing your exposure. In your own home, you can control that by, like what we do, using hardwired Ethernet connections, but a smart meter is something that is pulsing radiation 24/7. Seeing it is very difficult to reduce your exposure in public, the one place you have control over is your very own home. EMS, or microwave sickness, is a recognized disability under the Americans with Disability Act. We learned that. We got protections under federal law 21 years ago. And it's important that Longmont's protections are in alignment with the ADA and that folks have options in place. Thank you so much for taking action. Please protect your residents from involuntary exposure, and we appreciate you listening to these comments. Thank you for allowing us to speak tonight.
Thank you.
And I have Amelia here if you want to start her timer.
Hi, my name is Amelia. I'm 14 years old.
Amelia, we can't hear you very well. If you could speak up a little bit.
Is this better? Okay.
Not.
I'm 14 years old and I'm a victim of
I don't know about everybody else, but I can't hear.
I cannot hear.
Amelia's.
What we can do is we can call in if that's okay with you. If you want to move on to other people, we'll call in.
Okay. So Courtney, we weren't having any trouble hearing you. If there's a way that Amelia can speak more clearly into the microphone or something.
Can you hear me now? Hi.
That's great.
Okay. My name is Amelia. I'm 14 years old and I am a victim of wireless radiation. I was not born sensitive to wireless radiation. I was like any other kid. I was diagnosed with EHS, or EMS, electromagnetic sensitivity, after a cell tower was constructed in my neighborhood. Our Board of Health conducted an 18-month-long investigation, determined the radio frequency radiation was a hazard and rendered our homes uninhabitable, and ordered Verizon to cease and desist operations of their injurious tower. Because there is no opt-out from a cell tower, we had to leave our family home that we love to move on to a 100-year-old cottage with no plumbing, where we sleep on mattresses on the floor. But because there is no cell tower, we can sleep without insomnia, headaches, nausea, vomiting, and skin rashes, without RF radiation from a cell tower. We have become part of the ever-growing numbers of EMF refugees. This RF radiation is the same radiation that utility customers are exposed to by smart meters on their home. There are now an EMF medical conference dedicated to RF radiation harm. There are international diagnostic codes to document harm, and smart meter radiation that has been a subject of successful litigation of award-winning documentaries like the one called Take Back Your Power, about how these so-called smart meters drive up the cost of utilities and drive down the quality of people's health. This is not the first time I have spoken on this issue. 2 years ago, I spoke on behalf of Senator Moore's bill to ensure ratepayers can choose utility meters that do not emit radio frequency radiation. I have also spoken on behalf of Representative Golden's bill requiring an opt-out from smart meters. We are very grateful for all those across the country creating education, awareness, and protections around this issue. As you've seen in other states, we need an opt-out and no fees for this meter. In doing so, you honor and adhere to the Americans with Disabilities Act by providing protections and equal access to utilities. You speak about protecting our low-income and vulnerable populations, and we are asking you to please protect us. Everyone deserves customer choice and opt-out bills because those who are sick, sensitive, and aware of the issue simply do not consent to RF radiation from these meters. We want to be safe and healthy in our homes. We can use wired technology in our house so we are not exposed, but we look to you to ensure consumer protections for us, the children, who are more vulnerable to the effects of this radiation. On behalf of myself, my little sister, and the children sick in our neighborhood, we thank you for supporting these efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Doe Kelly.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Oh, okay. Wow. Bravo. The last two speakers, amazing stuff. I'm Doe Kelly of Barbary Drive here in Longmont, and I'm calling now for the people of Longmont to be able to keep their analog meters. There's mounting evidence that the dirty electricity engendered by non-broadcasting digital opt-out meters is just as bad as radio frequency, also known as microwave broadcasting digital smart meters. In my opinion, that will surely be the next large bombshell in this unfolding battle for the survival of people such as the two you just heard, and myself, with or without electromagnetic sensitivities. Some of you have them, some of you don't, as well as our already threatened bees and pollinators that are disappearing in record numbers. My new motto is, it doesn't have to be wireless to be toxic. And in case you don't know what dirty electricity is, I quote, I hope I can get my page in front of me. Dirty electricity is a spiky, pulsed, highly variable electrical current that rides through all the circuitry of a building. It has devastating health effects. Many people are already experiencing those effects, which include high blood pressure, tinnitus, insomnia, and cognitive difficulties. And likely the sorts of things that Amelia outlined and her mother. The Nevada Consumer Protection Bureau reached an agreement with the Nevada Public Utilities Commission to allow individuals such as myself and the people in Longmont to keep their analog meters, in part because of health problems associated with the switched mode power supplies. Prevention Magazine also reported on the hazards of dirty electricity. Digital meters, such as the opt-out meters, whether or not they're smart, cause dirty electricity to flow through your home's wiring. The problem is what is called the switched mode power supply. Switched mode power supplies are used to run the digital meter, whether a smart meter or DTE's radio off opt-out meter. DTE refers to a power company that this was referring to in the article. In order for a smart meter to be powered, the 240 volts coming off the power line to the meter must be stepped down to 4 to 10 volts. A switched mode power supply is the device used to step down the voltage from 240 volts to 4 to 10 volts. This generates an enormous amount of what's commonly known as dirty electricity and referred to by electricians and electrical engineers as voltage transients, voltage harmonics, line noise, and power quality issues. Now, I've become more aware of this recently because I have a friend in the medical profession who's been very disabled herself by a cell tower. A distance from her property that she owns and has lived in for decades. And recently the power company there came and put an opt-out meter on her dwelling. She was made basically incapacitated. She thought she almost died. This woman is a doctor of veterinary medicine and an acupuncturist. And so she has been involved in various forms of research, especially on electromagnetic radiation.
Thank you for your comments. Your time your 3 minutes is up.
Oh,
thank you.
All right, next we have, I think this is Kim Edmondson.
Hello, yeah, this is Kim Edmondson of Bittersweet Lane in Longmont. And I'm wondering, how is that solar working on days like today where we have all this lovely snow? I mean, really, we really can't get away from gas and all of that fossil fuels that because first of all, we don't have a place to store it on a day like today, but that's a whole nother thing. With the sustainability, again, I'm reaching out because I'm concerned about the EMF hazards and health concerns. I'm also someone who is impacted and EMF sensitive. I just saw my functional doctor last week. All of my labs were perfect, my hormones, nutrition, everything, but I still feel like hell warmed over most days because of EMF radiation and cell phones. I just can't seem to feel well because of it being everywhere and not able to escape it. The side effects of EMFs are dizziness, ear pain, memory problems, heart palpitations. I used to have those things very badly until I started using devices to mitigate it. Insomnia, sleep problems, chronic inflammation, decreased immunity, lower metabolism, hormonal disruption, depleted mitochondria. It increases your risk of cancer, damage to your nervous system, causes cancers. And in children, EMF causes memory problems, difficulty concentrating, eye problems, sleep problems, feeling unwell, headaches, dizziness, tinnitus, chronic fatigue, and also heart palpitations because the heart is an electromagnetic device, just like the brain. That's why they can record and track things using electrodes with your heart and your brain activity. So yeah, there's that problem. And you're all concerned about being sustainable and caring for our people. Well, how can you care for our people when you're going to end up Wi-Fiing them with your smart meters? And like I said, it should be an opt-out for free. There should be no questions asked. There should be no charge for it. I agree with that. There's also this other pattern in the sciences that's been going on. An example off topic is Dr. Phil Smolenek's PhD in pharmacology and toxicology at Harvard Dental Research Division was asked to look at the effects of fluoride in children. She found it's a major neurotoxin that affects brain development. After this finding, her office was raided and her paper retracted and her career destroyed. Another example is Dr. Gilles Eric Severlin, a PhD in molecular biology in the University of Caen in France. He was asked to do a study on GMO. After his result, findings found that the mouse developed mammary tumors and had a shorter lifespan. His career also was destroyed and the paper retracted. There have been many holistic physicians that have turned up dead after curing cancer and reversing autism, most of them using a compound called GCMAF. The lab providing this compound in Switzerland was raided, then shortly burned to the ground afterwards. When people speak of unpopular truths, there's a pattern of bad things happening. Do you really trust the science around climate change, which most of the sustainability stuff is based on? I asked a friend of ours, a climate scientist, Noah, his thoughts on it. He refused to comment as he did not want to be misquoted. So I instead asked, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I worked at NOAA and wanted to do a study to prove climate change doesn't exist and is not caused by man, would I get any grant money for that? He responded with, no, you would not, and most likely your career would be over. Meanwhile, the world turns a blind eye to the geoengineering going on over our heads almost daily, ignoring that the US government holds over 400 patents for weather modification technology. I learned this from a local patent lawyer, as a matter of fact.
Thank you for your comment. Thank you.
And I think lastly, we have Susan Foster.
There, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. My name is Susan Foster, and I'm a relatively new resident of Longmont. In returning to Colorado, I chose Longmont in large part because I see it as one of having the greatest potential for good health in this increasingly wireless world right here, because you offer fiber to the premises. I am a medical writer, an honorary firefighter with the San Diego Fire Department, and a fire and utility consultant. I believe we are in the midst of a climate crisis, and it is our responsibility to work together to find solutions that truly work. I am here to implore the board to urge a moratorium for Longmont on the build out of smart meters. And let me tell you precisely why. I'm asking this for 3 reasons. Number 1, I work with attorneys and engineers in the arena of telecommunications utilities, and I have been advised there is no independent study that has concluded smart meters will help us achieve energy sustainability in 5, 10, or 20 years. I would respectfully ask that the board make public the study that was provided to Longmont that showed how much energy would be saved per year, time averaged, until sustainability is achieved. And I would like to see the report proving that sustainability is achievable within the time frame promised to Longmont. Number 2, 85% of the smart meters on the market today are fire risks because of the way they were designed. Smart meters don't have fuses, but rather a varistor, which is used in TV sets to protect them against a 350 volt surge. What happened in Stockton, California could happen anywhere. This occurred in 2015, and it's instructional for every city considering smart meters. A car hit a light pole. The 60 kV transmission line dropped on the 12 kV distribution line and sent a surge throughout Stockton. 5,000 smart meters caught fire. Over 80 house fires ensued. The varistor failed against a surge in the many thousands of volts. There have indeed been fires as a result of the Landis-Gear smart meters Longmont has purchased. Number 3, on August 13, 2021, the second highest court in the land ruled in favor of 2 nonprofits that sued the FCC for failing to update the regulatory standards for 26 years. The judge wrote in part, the commission failed to provide a reasoned explanation for its determination that its guidelines adequately protect against the harmful effects of exposure to radio frequency radiation. For these reasons, I would urge you to retain your reliable analog meters, educate the community, about energy consumption and preserve the health of your community so that Longmont can truly be the shining city on the hill. If you are interested, I would be happy to present to the board on the issue of fire and health risks from smart meters at a future meeting. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your comments. And Heather, just to confirm, that is our final speaker.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And now moving on to the next item on the agenda, the follow-up discussion on the public to be heard, invited to be heard process. Lisa, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm going to turn it pretty quickly back to you all, but as you recall, last year, and I'm sorry, I can't, it looks like September, there was an interest in revisiting the current rules around public invited to be heard to make the process more inclusive and responsive. We had some conversations with our attorney's office to understand sort of what was it within the parameters of what the board could do around public invited to be heard. And in your packet on page 15, there's a synopsis of the responses that we got from the attorney's office to help guide you all in this conversation. And then we went to have a follow-up conversation, I believe, in November, and it was one of those where not very many members were present, and those that were present asked to table this conversation to today to have more members present to help make this decision. So hopefully you all were able to read through that in your packet. Essentially, the gist of the information from the attorneys is that you all can change the number of minutes or the time frame that each public invited to be heard member can have, as long as that same time limit is applied consistently to all public invited to be heard folks. So you could change the length of the individual comment period. There was a question around whether or not you all could comment back or ask questions to public invited to be heard. And that area is definitely a little bit more challenging and a little bit more gray, I would say. In the attorney's advice was really that you could, however, you'd have to provide comment to all public invited to be heard, not just one. And then there's some question around, would that come from the chair? Would that come from each individual board member? So there's a lot of challenge with that particular approach. And I think the bigger issue is that potentially pushes the board a little bit outside of what your mandate is in terms of providing advice and feedback to city council. So we definitely don't want you all to be in an interchange with public invited to be heard, whereby it might be viewed that you all are speaking for the city, because that is really the purview of city council. You could also have 2 public invited to be heard sessions, and or you could add a section to the agenda that is something along the lines of board member, council, and staff comments, at which time you all could talk amongst yourselves about some of the comments and topics that were brought up during public invited to be heard, and decide whether or not you wanted to bring something forward for a more formal discussion at a future board meeting. And then that none of these things are mutually exclusive. So you have a number of different options, but I'm going to turn it all over to you all to determine what changes, if any, you all want to make to the public invited to be heard process and structure.
Thank you. Thanks for summarizing that so well. I'd like to open the floor to for comments on this topic. Is it Robert?
Yeah, so I guess my take on the public invited to be heard and how we fit as a board is our role is to advise the city council, and there are rarely topics that require any kind of emergency discussion. I really don't think that's realistic. It's not really our role to do that. I think that the purpose of the public invited to be heard, from my perspective, is to introduce ideas that we should consider bringing up in future meetings with a well-rounded perspective, with more research, and the public's ability to sort of introduce topics that we may not be discussing and considering already is very, very valuable. It would be very rare for us to be able to have an informed, qualified discussion in the moment of what we've heard. And I like the ability of items from the board as an opportunity to raise a topic further if we think it needs promotion for the next month's agenda or some future meeting where we might be able to request additional speakers or additional content on a topic or a more formal agenda item. I really like that. A wonderful way to leverage the insight we gain from the community.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand anything that Robert said. I don't know if I'm the only one. Did other people hear that? Kate was shaking her head, so maybe you were hearing the comments.
I caught I think a good portion of it, but I'll try to summarize what I think I understood. And so Robert, please jump in if I misspeak, but I think the main takeaway is that you like the idea of having a section at where we can discuss the comments.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I was unclear too. It was more that I like the idea that we can raise items in the items from the board portion of the agenda to consider for a future meeting where we can have a more robust discussion with more preparation and leverage the insights that the community brings to the table that way, as there's not critical urgency to discuss any of those things in a moment.
Right. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of background noise where you are, but so rather than adding a new section to the agenda, the idea is to use the section in the agenda where we have items from the board, and if the board would like to bring any of the topics that came up during public invited to be heard, that would be the time. And we could discuss whether or not, at that time, we want to continue discussion in a future meeting. And then one thing that I left out originally that Robert reiterated is that rarely are these items so urgent that they need to be addressed right in the moment. Yeah, Ralph.
This is an important topic to me. I served on the executive committee of the county that I lived in North Carolina, and it was much less restrictive than I've seen here. And I think this is really an important topic. I think it's very important that we err to the side of giving people a voice, giving the public a voice over what's convenient for us. I think it's really important to get information that's provided to us that we otherwise wouldn't have access to. And I think it's also important, and I don't know how we'll figure out the mechanism for this, to have the opportunity to clarify and understand information that's presented, especially if it turns out to be something that we feel is important and we want to pick up on. We don't want to spend all of our time on this, obviously, but I've seen the great benefit over 8 or 10 years of serving in a public arena by making sure that people did have access. I'm not concerned about asking questions of people that it looks like we're speaking for the for the city, because we're not. If we're asking for clarification on a point that's been made, it's only so that we are garnering the information that we decide as a board is important to convey to city council. It gets to that. So this is just sort of my general thinking. I don't have all the answers to this because obviously there are legal issues that need to be considered. I don't know, for instance, whether or not if we give everybody the right to extend based on the fact that the board votes to extend a particular speaker is discriminatory. This is a sort of a little of a gray area in the way this, the way the document read was, well, if you extend, one person's time, you have to extend everybody's time. but are you not giving everybody, equal opportunity if everybody has the right to have their time extended if the board agrees to have it extended? Because, from my own standpoint, and my time is precious, I run 3 companies. This is time that's, precious to me as it is to everybody. But I feel it's really important. And for some of these people, I wouldn't have minded an extra minute or 2 minutes. Obviously, you have 10 speakers and everyone's got 2 more minutes. Adding 2 minutes doesn't sound like much when you're talking about one person, but when you're opening it up, I understand there's ramifications for this. So I just feel this is an important topic. I mentioned at the November meeting that I had gone to a city council meeting to comment on something and, was asked for board feedback on my comments and was told this was not the appropriate forum for that. And as a result, nothing happened with the comments that I made on that particular topic. So I just want to throw out to the board the idea that my interest is erring to the side of making sure people's voices are heard, but still respecting what our mission is and what our role is in our community government. So those are some thoughts.
Thanks for those thoughts. Charles.
Yeah, I think it's important, of course, to give a forum to the community to be able to voice their concerns and provide suggestions, and I think that's important. At the same time, they do have 3 minutes, so they do have a voice, and a well-crafted, prepared statement that's efficient and well done should be able to communicate sufficiently their concerns and their comments. So I would not extend. I think they already, that's if they come prepared, there's enough of an opportunity, and many of these topics we hear over and over again. So if you integrate over time the amount of time that we've heard these topics, it's 3 minutes and then another 3 minutes and another 3 minutes. And you add that up over the year, and it's significant. So I would not vote or support extending the time beyond 3 minutes.
Jim.
I mean, I think that we get a lot of great comments that can fit within 3 minutes, but I also think that we also, Heather is great about making sure that if there's any additional follow-up information that people would like to share with us, that it's shared with us. And I read through that when I get it. What I do like is the idea that people have had that it might be good if we almost never use the items from the board section of our agenda. And it might be good to kind of like formalize that as a time where if there are things that come up either in the comments or in the additional materials that people send us that we think we would like to have more information on, or we'd like a further discussion on, or whatever, that we maybe try to in this new year, try to be a little bit more responsive to some of those things. But that maybe that's what we can then say are, the items from the board time is really for, is to try to interact with things that aren't actually on the schedule. And I even thought about it today. Lisa brought up our schedule for the next year, but had that not been what we were talking about today, I probably would have, because this transportation thing was on my brain, wanted to say something. But I honestly don't remember in all my time here saying anything during the items from the board. So maybe if we kind of like try to use that as a forum to be a little bit more responsive as a board, that might be good.
Thanks. Marcia.
Thank you. Just procedurally, this is something that the council has done, and has done, in fact, by a recommendation of some of the current group of people, that they recommend a subject matter expert, and then the council can choose to invite that subject matter expert on a later agenda. So that's always a way to handle the matter when this board also feels that something needs more digging into from a particular viewpoint.
One thing that I want to clarify, and that I'm not seeing in our comments from the attorneys, and that is, are we allowed to ask clarifying questions?
My understanding when I brought that up was that it fell into that gray area of that back and forth, that was considered a response, and that would fall into that category that you would then need to respond to each public invited to be heard speaker. So I think that would fall more into if you all were to talk amongst yourselves after that period and pose that there's clarifying questions that need to be answered. People can follow up by email, as Jim spoke to, then can provide more information. And that's probably the route that we would need to go to address some of those concerns or comments brought up by the attorney. That's my understanding.
Thank you.
I do have emails for email addresses for people that would comment during public invited to be heard. So if there were follow-up questions that a board member had, we could always, I could get you their information and you could follow up with them that way if you wanted to as well.
And Marcia, I think you were going to comment as well. Did you?
Oh, I was thinking about what Lisa said, and I'm not sure. You know, it can become very complicated if you ask a clarifying question. And so yeah, I'm kind of with Eugene and Lisa that following up in a subsequent meeting after discussion is probably a better use of the board's time. You know, for example, the Landis and Gear line of meters that the city bought was not available for installation until 2020. So it could not have been the cause of a fire in 2015.
So I'll just share my thoughts. I want to thank Ralph for you know, the emphasis on you know, making sure that people feel heard, and I think that that's a really, it's important, and people spend time coming to this meeting to share their thoughts, and that's not there's a I think that I can understand the expectation or the desire for acknowledgement. I really I like this idea of using our agenda time for, you know, items from the board to have an opportunity to comment, you know, bring in, you know, do we have questions that we want to follow up with, and it does seem that would be a not too heavy of a lift to at least send out the questions. Speaking as somebody who's not the one who's writing that email, Heather, recognizing that you would be the one who would be following up, and so I you know, my thoughts are this: there's value in having a discussion on these items when it's warranted, and perhaps, you know, it seems to me, my reading of this document is like commenting, questioning is probably not an option for us. That the best thing to do is take it to a separate section and take our time then to process. So with that, would we like to formalize that? do we want to have a motion where we formalize we will comment, have discussion on any public invited to be heard comments during our items from the board agenda item. Charles.
Does that need to be formalized, or can we just make sure that the board is informed that they have that option?
I think if you're not making any change to the process that we already have, there is no formal decision that needs to be made.
Okay. Jim.
Would it be possible just to put a little reminder under the items from the board as to like just to try to encourage us to start doing that more responsively?
A reminder, something like if you have anything you want to bring up from public invited to be heard at this time, or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
including response from public invited to be heard. Okay.
The council agenda has a reminder about adding things at a certain point in the meeting, so it's procedurally precedented.
Great, thank you. Okay, then I think we can move on to the next item on the agenda, and Lisa, that is yours as well.
Great, thank you all. And this is just a quick update on the Plastic Pollution Reduction Act, since it's now into January. That's a state law that was passed last year that, one, repealed the preemption on plastic bans at a local level, and two, put into place a bag fee beginning on January 1st, 2023 for both paper and plastic bags, and then a plastic bag ban beginning in January of 2024. People can still use paper bags after that time with the fee continuation. Part of that is a requirement that a portion of that be remitted to the municipality so that we can use those funds for zero waste efforts. And it doesn't apply to all businesses, but so there are businesses within Longmont that are exempt from that process. It's typically businesses that have 3 or more locations within Colorado. And then also in 2024, in June of 2024, a polystyrene ban kicks into place as well. And so just a reminder, if you're seeing that out and around, or if you have questions from folks in your respective communities, you're likely seeing a 10-cent bag fee pop up in different places. People that are eligible for income qualified programs like SNAP are exempt from that fee, but they have to show proof of participation in those sorts of programs to be exempted from that fee. We do have some reusable bags that are available through the city for residents that need them, and also for businesses to help distribute. But just wanted to share that information. It's definitely relates to our zero waste efforts, and we're also trying to talk about that alongside of our universal recycling ordinance requirements, just so that we're mindful of other requirements that are coming down on businesses as well. And just trying to share that information to try to make sure that people have correct information when they're out and about. So I'm happy to answer any questions if I can. There are some nuances to that we are discovering for sure, but that's pretty much mostly what I wanted to share.
Thanks. Any questions, comments? All right, thanks for that, Lisa.
Real quick, I just want to note on your agenda, it did say Platte River in the parentheses at the end of that. And that was my misread on Lisa's agenda. So it's not PP, it was PPRA, not PRPA. So sorry for the mistype there.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks. Okay. The next item on the agenda is items for the board. As a reminder, this is an opportunity for us to discuss anything that we want to discuss for public invited to be heard. So any thoughts, ideas, Charles?
So I see that we have just everything just moved around because I talking. Daryl's on the call, and I wonder if maybe he could recommend someone from LPC who could talk to us about the advanced metering project, and specifically things like maybe even the technical specifications. For example, how many times per day does the smart meters send signals? What's the strength of those signals? And how long are those signals? So you can get kind of the integrated total emissions that are coming from those. Because my understanding is those are usually very intermittent and only emit a signal once every 15 minutes or once every half hour or something like that. And they're usually hundredths of a second or something like that. So and then also other sources of RF radiation. So everything from the sun to any AC powered device emits RMF or EMF or radio frequency interference, etc. So if you have LED light bulbs, you may realize that sometimes they, for example, interfere with your garage door opener. So it'd be great if we got more just information. I think maybe LPC might be able to recommend someone to discuss these things, but it'd be good to just have some more background information to be able to like understand the public to be heard comments and know what, know more of what's going on. I'm not an electrical engineer, but it'd be good to get a little tutoring in that area.
I think even if you were an electrical engineer, you wouldn't brag about it. So, yeah, when it comes to the AMI meters, we do have some folks here at LPC that can speak to some of the questions you posed. You're right, the transmission, and I think Councilmember Martin can probably speak to this better than I can, but you're right, the transmissions are pretty infrequent and intermittent. We do have a graphic that shows the relative RF of a typical AMI smart meter compared to other things like cell phones and tablets and other common devices, and it is pretty small compared to those other devices. But I guess to make sure that we address all of your questions, would it be appropriate for me to ask for maybe a list of questions, and then we can go back and kind of prepare some material and responses so that we're not coming to you with sort of half of the questions answered, and then we have to come back again? I think it would be helpful for me to just kind of have a complete set, at least to the extent that you can at this point. And then we can certainly prepare and come back in the future.
Yeah, I'd be happy to provide some of the questions I have. I mean, some of them I just don't know, like how often do they emit signals, and how often does it have to emit signals? How often do you have to communicate with the advanced meter? Could you have something like local memory and then have it just send whatever's from the local memory once per day instead of 24 times per day? Or I don't know how often it emits, but I think they're usually every half hour or 15 minutes or something, and you could probably send once a day if you wanted to. And same amount of information, and there's a certain amount of on and off transients in turning these guys on and off. So you'd probably save a lot in terms of the amount of time that they're communicating. But just questions like that, how it works, and I can come up with some of my questions, but I'm sure others might too. I mean, and mostly inspired by what our public have public invited to be heard comments have mentioned, and just wanting to know more about how does this work. And I'm out in the sun when I ride my bike. The sun emits radio frequency radiation. I have no idea what's the relative strength of that radiation, of course, in what part of the spectrum. And so it's like kind of like a baseline, like where are we, like how are these related to each other, and what's my cell phone, which is on a lot more often, and it's closer to me usually than a smart meter is. But is that something that's on that scale? What kind of exposures are we talking about with these advanced metering systems?
Sure. Yeah, we can absolutely speak to some of those.
Mm-hmm.
We're happy to.
Yeah, a lot of those were in the presentation to council that were gosh, it's almost been 2 years since we began that. But your assumption, except for the interval, a mesh network, the reporting interval, which is, you know, can be 15 minutes or 5 minutes or half an hour or an hour usually, is you know, when all of the collected data is reported back to the meter data management system at the head. But the network does do some activity, organizational activity, pinging, because it's a mesh network and it behaves like a mesh network. So I don't know if you want to go that deep, but yeah, those little tiny signals may happen more often than that. And also you would, if you changed it to a once a day report, you'd lose most of the utility of the smart meter, because reading the meter is the least of the work that the thing does. It's more about avoiding some of the things that people were talking about, like you know, a difference between real and imaginary power factor, right? You know, so the things that allow the grid to be balanced and not noisy and not have malfunctions happen are really the more important functions of next generation smart meters than just reading consumption data.
And I can answer just a couple of quick questions. You know, Heather pointed out that the website, or City of Longmont website, actually answers some of these questions. So, for example, on the question of how often the AMI meter transmits, it's less than a second every hour. So it's not a lot. In terms of the relative strength, RF strength, according to the FCC, RF levels are greater in cell phones, which are about 13,000 times greater. Microwave ovens are about 300 times greater. And then a home Wi-Fi router is about 70 times greater. So again, we can still come back and provide some additional details, but if, you know, for those specific hot questions, at least you can get additional information on the website.
Great, thank you. We have just, as a reminder, we have had an exercise of sending in questions ahead of a meeting. And I think that's a great suggestion, Daryl. And Heather, would you mind, since we're not all here, sending out an email to the entire board asking for questions? And I think there's also we now need to add this to our agenda, a future agenda. But I'm sure we could come up with some great questions.
I can sure do that. I'll do that tomorrow morning. I'll send that out to you. I also have a couple of other items that came in from some of the people who spoke tonight that I'll send out in that email as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, Heather, I would be interested, and it could be if any of the people that spoke have references or studies that they could submit to you. I'd really like to have an opportunity to look at some of those resources and get a little more educated.
Perfect. Well, great. Any other thoughts on this? Okay. Then we'll move on to items from council. Anything for us?
My mind was down the smart meter rat hole, which is a favorite subject of mine. So council stuff. I should reiterate that the council retreat is coming up. I mean, it's in March, so it doesn't feel that it's that soon, but when you're trying to build an agenda and research information to inform the council, it's roaring down at us at lightning speed. And Lisa will probably want to corroborate this. A very high priority for this is elaborating some of the sustainability work that are main parts of the agenda. So building envelope improvement is going to be huge for 2023 as a short-term goal, and code upgrades, as in the beneficial electrification plan, are going to be huge over the next 5 years. And so if this board is going to make recommendations to the council for the retreat, or if this board wants to plan to come and listen and understand stuff, it's good to have those dates in mind. I'm really excited about getting more done. There are some things that got done because we had goals. We had the climate emergency declaration, we had the beneficial electrification plan, and those things actually got done. And now it's time to sunset those council work goals and policy goals, and really focus harder on implementation. So, this is really a time when this board can do it, show its stuff.
Great, thanks. Okay. Well, the last item on the agenda is just a reminder of the informational items and correspondence that's in your board packet. Just making sure that everyone reviews that if you haven't already. And with that, we've reached the end of the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All
right.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.